Hello and welcome to lecture number 5, which covers Chapter 4, Ethical and Social Issues in Information Systems for BADM323. The learning objectives covered this week cover what ethical, social, and political issues are raised by information systems, what specific principles for conduct can be used to guide ethical decisions, why do contemporary information systems, technology, and the Internet pose challenges to protection of individual privacy and intellectual property, and how have information systems affected everyday life? The opening case, behavioral targeting, your privacy is the target, shows that technology can be a double-edged sword. It can be the source of many benefits. It can also create new opportunities for breaking the law or taking benefits away from others. The web has created new opportunities and challenges regarding privacy issues. It has also created struggles between businesses and users regarding vast amounts of data that are collected from web surfing. The misuse and abuse of data also creates moral and ethical dilemmas that you are likely to face in the workplace. So which is more important to you from an individual standpoint? The monetary interests of online advertisers and search engines, or protecting personal data as much as possible? Or which is more important to you from a business standpoint if you are paying for web advertising placements? The monetary interests of online advertisers and search engines, or protecting personal data as much as possible? In November of 2009, Google released a dashboard application that allowed users to access the search engine's database and discover some of the data that have been accumulated over the years. You may want to look at this service so that you can get a first-hand account of some of the online activities. If you have a Google account, log on to it and then look in the upper right-hand side for My Account. Click on that and the account page comes up. Look for the dashboard link. Do you know if you are tracked on the web? If you do know that you are tracked on the web, would you likely know what information companies such as Google have about you? Do you feel comfortable that you can control and manage your online personal information, or do you feel you have no control over this information? Imagine that. When you turn on your television to watch a show, more than 100 cameras are activated inside the TV, watching your every move, comment, and of course what show you are watching. Many websites today have more than 100 tracking programs, also known as bugs, on the home page. There are numerous examples of business ethical failures. How is information systems, or their absence, how might they have been related to the current financial crisis in the United States, the investment banks that have suffered heavy losses, and individuals who were able to defraud investors of millions? What role did IS have in this crisis? The Madoff Ponzi scheme is intrusive. Systems were used for more than 20 years to fool investors, regulators, investigators about the true nature of Madoff's business. It probably goes without saying that security and ethical issues raised by the information age, and specifically the Internet, are the most explosive to face our society in decades. It will be many years and many court battles before socially acceptable policies and practice are in place. So you say to yourself, hey, I don't really care about my online privacy. Nobody will ever care about what I do or where I go on the Internet. Well, you might want to think about that twice. A real estate broker sought to bury a negative review in a client posted online after a home buying experience. A banking executive looked to de-emphasize content from Google search results about a convict who shared his name. A woman new to a dating service scene wanted to remove some painful references to her online divorce records. The stakes can be high for job seekers, especially those who may be concerned about what potential employers would see on their online profile. A recent Microsoft Corporation study reported that 78% of recruiters and human resource professionals used online search engines to screen applicants, while 63% looked at social networking sites when researching job candidates. Back in 2010, the Cohasset School Committee asked a teacher to resign after she posted comments on Facebook that called residents of the South Shore town snobby and arrogant. Imagine what that does for her reputation. Ethical, social, and privacy issues are important to everyone. Even though the internet is about 40 years old, the World Wide Web is close to 20 years old. Our society is just beginning to address the ethical issues and dilemmas raised by the technological advances. It is difficult to measure one person's ethics against another person's desire to make money or wreak havoc. That's much, much easier by the internet. Even though the U.S. government has passed some laws to control criminal behavior and ethical issues associated with the internet, it's difficult to stay one step ahead of the ever-changing technology. Can you describe some of the ethical dilemmas that are presented by information systems and new developments in technology? Privacy is an important issue. The opening a case illustrates that the business models of Google, Facebook, and many other sites depend on getting users to give up their personal information so it can be used to market and sell their products. Many of these issues not only touch our society as a whole, but also raise lots of questions for organizations, companies, and the workplace in general. We hear arguments for free speech, personal responsibility, and corporate responsibility. There are discussions about the government's role in all of this. At the beginning of Chapter 4, Loudon says, "Suddenly, individual actors are confronted with new situations often not covered by the old rules. Social institutions cannot respond overnight to these ripples. Political institutions also require time before developing new laws and often require the demonstration of real harm before they act. In the meantime, you may have to act. You may be forced to act in a legal gray area." Can you provide any examples of how IT has challenged some area of ethics, social life, or legal arrangements? How you act individually and as groups in this gray area may well define the future of our society. Though that may sound a bit dramatic, you must understand that you are part of the development of acceptable usage of this new medium and will help define the direction in which it goes. Figure 4.1 shows the relationship between ethical, social, and political issues in the information society. You could change this. The graphic displays the 5 moral dimensions listed in the caption. Consider online peer-to-peer, BitTorrent, shared music as an example of how new technology has ethical, social, and eventually political, or legal, ramifications. If music can be ripped off, why pay any money for it? Why should anyone care about record labels and or artists' income? The 5 dimensions we'll discuss are information rights and obligations, property rights and obligations, accountability and control, system quality, and the quality of life. They all apply in today's business environment. While these dimensions have existed in some form or another for years, they are made more important with the technological advances you've seen in the last 10 years. An issue dealing with information rights might be, what rights do individuals possess with respect to themselves? What do they have a right to protect? An issue dealing with quality of life might be, what values should be preserved in an information and knowledge-based society? An information dealing with system quality might be, what standards of data and system quality should we demand to protect individual rights to the safety of society? Information technologies pose problems and threats to establish social rules, and technological advances pose new situations and possible threats to privacy and ethics. Which of these trends do you believe might be the most adverse consequence? Why do you feel this way? Do the positives outweigh the negatives for all 4 issues? Why or why not? In addition to the technologies described in 4.2 here, you need to understand the most recent technological threats to your privacy in cyberspace. If we look at Google's Street View, it's a controversial mapping tool that has allowed Google to capture Wi-Fi signals in addition to street-level imagery in 30 countries over the 3-year period. Google obtained Wi-Fi data, including email passwords and content, from receivers that were concealed in the Street View vehicles. Many countries and several U.S. states are currently investigating Google Street View. In May, Epic urged the Federal Communications Commission to open an investigation into Street View, as Google's practices appear to violate U.S. federal wiretap laws as well as the U.S. Communications Act. You can find more information on www.epic.org. That's epic.org. In Foltz v. Virginia, the Virginia Court of Appeals held that law enforcement may place a GPS tracking device on a vehicle without violating the Fourth Amendment. The court found that the defendant did not have an expectation of privacy, and therefore attaching a tracking device to the bumper did not require a warrant. New handheld web appliances will allow businesses to track your physical whereabouts and offer you discounts and special offers depending on your geographic location. As you walk down a city street, you'll be notified that the restaurant 2 blocks away has an opening table waiting just for you. Chairman Leahy announced that the new subcommittee on privacy and technology, Senator Patrick Leahy, Democrat from Vermont, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, has established a new subcommittee on privacy, technology, and the law as part of his commitment to protecting America's privacy in the digital age. Senator Al Franken, Democrat from Minnesota, will chair the subcommittee, which will cover privacy laws and policies, new business practices, social networking sites, privacy standards, and the privacy implications of emerging technologies. For related information, see EPIC, Social Network Privacy, EPIC, Cloud Computing. The Federal Trade Commission announced a settlement in EPIC Facebook privacy complaint. The Federal Trade Commission has announced an agreement with Facebook that follows from complaints filed by EPIC and other consumer and privacy organizations in 2009 and 2010. In 2009, the EPIC first asked the FTC to investigate Facebook's decision to change its users' privacy settings in a way that made users' personal information, such as friend lists and application usage data, more widely available to the public and to Facebook's business partners. The violations are also detailed in FTC's 8-count complaint against the company. The proposed settlement agreement bars Facebook from making future changes to privacy settings without the affirmation consent of users, and requires the company to implement a comprehensive privacy protection program and submit an independent privacy audit for 20 years. The settlement does not adopt EPIC's recommendation that Facebook restore users' privacy settings to pre-2009 levels. Facebook's CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, reacted to the settlement in a post on Facebook's blog saying that he was first to admit that we've made a bunch of mistakes. For more information, you may want to see EPIC. Article name, In Regard to Facebook and EPIC, Federal Trade Commission, November 29, 2011. A few of the news items in the list above came from a website maintained by the Electronic Privacy Information Center, an organization devoted to privacy issues associated with the use of new technologies tied to networks in general, and the Internet specifically. It is one of the premier organizations dedicated to preserving the privacy of the American citizen. If you haven't visited the website, you should. The scenario at the beginning of this section about profiling is possible through the technique called data mining. Add to that the capabilities of non-obvious relationship awareness, otherwise known as NORA, data analysis technology, as shown in Figure 4.2, which we'll show in a sec here. And complete strangers might know just as much about you as you do. It can and has been done, so you should be concerned and you should care. Online profiling is one of the most controversial computer-related ethical, social, and political issues today. Although it is used fairly extensively on the Internet, it is also used by insurance firms, health insurance firms, casinos, and of course national authorities around the globe for finding potential terrorists. The investment arms of the CIA and Google are both backing a company that monitors the web in real time and says it uses that information to predict the future. The company is called Recorded Future, and it scours tens of thousands of websites, blogs, and Twitter accounts to find the relationships between people, organizations, actions, and incidents. Both present a still to come. In a white paper, the company says its Temporal analytics engine goes beyond search by looking at the invisible links between documents that talk about the same or related entities and events. The idea is to figure out for each incident who was involved, where it happened, and when it might go down. Recorded future then plots that chatter, showing online momentum for any given event. The cool thing is, you can actually predict the curve in many cases. This is according to CEO Christopher Ahlberg, a former Swedish Army Ranger with a PhD in computer science. "We're right there as it happens," Ahlberg told Danger Room as he clicked through a demonstration. "We can assemble actual real-time dossiers on people." NORA is used by both the government and the private sector for its profiling capabilities. Can you provide potential examples of NORA, other than the ones mentioned in the caption, for both governmental and business purposes? One such example might be an airline identifying potential terrorists attempting to board a plane. Another might be government identifying potential terrorists by monitoring phone calls. Did you ever hear the old warning, just because you can doesn't mean you should? Well, a lot of things are possible on the internet nowadays, but that doesn't mean you should do them. Ethics is easily managed in small groups because the group itself tends to control the individual behavior. It's referred to as self-policing. The larger the group, the harder it is to manage the actions of individuals. Now stretch that to a huge number of people with many frames of references and experiences. Responsibility to the group becomes harder to police, and accountability for an individual's action is harder to enforce. The basic concepts include responsibility, accountability, and liability. Every action causes a reaction. When you're using the internet, computers on campus, or your employer's computer, you should be aware of the following. First is responsibility, accepting potential costs, duties, and obligations for your decisions. Accountability, determining who should take the responsibility for decisions and actions. Liability includes legally placing responsibility with a person or group. And finally, due process, which ensures that laws are applied fairly and correctly. Responsibility, accountability, and liability are all yours when it comes to your actions in cyberspace. Every internet service provider has a usage policy, even if the so-called anonymous emailers that hide your real identity. Hotmail is a popular internet email service that allows you to mask your real identity. You could send out all the, shall we say, unethical, threatening, nasty, aberrant email you like. You think, hey, no one will really know who I am. This is cool. And then there comes a message from Hotmail to cease and desist. Your free email account is canceled because you violated Hotmail's usage policy. Then your local internet service provider contacts you and tells you you're terminated. Whew, you've violated its usage policy by your actions. By now, you're really mad, not to mention embarrassed. At least we hope you are. It's true, it does happen. Just because you think you can doesn't mean you should. Would you stand in the middle of a campus and shout insults? Loudon and Loudon point out, using information technology in a socially responsible manner means that you can and will be held accountable for your consequences of your actions, just as you are subject to rules, whether you like them or not, on Main Street, USA. In public, you are subject to societal rules in cyberspace. Anonymity isn't a license for socially unacceptable behavior. Some people seem so absolve themselves of responsibility by putting the onus on the computer. Hey, the computer screwed up. Or since it was an anonymous username, I didn't think I'd get caught. It just doesn't work that way in society, face to face or on the internet. No one can hide behind the technology. Humans control the computers, not the other way around. And if you have received threatening, aberrant emails or flames in a chat room or discussion groups and haven't reported them according to the usage policies, you may be as much part of the problem as the perpetrator. Information systems do not exist in a vacuum, and that these concepts are instrumental in understanding the impact of systems and measuring their success. Why is liability and due process such an important ethical concept? A rough answer would be that they provide recourse to individuals negatively affected by mismanagement of information systems, providing incentive to play by the rules. It's safe to say you'll find yourself in situations where your ethics are continually challenged online and offline. What should you do? Try the following. Separate the fact from the fiction. Remember, no matter how thin you slice it, there's always two sides. Determine who's really involved. And finally, and compromise. It doesn't always have to be an either-or outcome. And finally, anticipate the outcome. It will help you devise a better solution. You should study the ethical principles outlined in the text, as we'll be incorporating them into the discussions throughout the remainder of this chapter. So do you believe that any aspect of ethical analysis is lacking from this process? If so, what? Can you offer a brief example of an ethical dilemma, and how would you resolve it using this process? In the early days of the internet, just about anything was acceptable. The phrase "wild, wild web" was an appropriate cliché. But as the technology becomes more mainstream, the less wild it becomes. The principles listed in the text are deeply rooted in cultures around the world. We seriously doubt the authors of these guidelines had the internet in mind when they developed them. But when you think about it, they work nicely, even in cyberspace. The first one, known as the Golden Rule, do unto others as you would have done unto you. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative states that if an action is not right for everyone, perhaps it's not right for anyone. The Descartes' rule of change: if an action cannot be taken repeatedly, it's not the right to take at all. Take the action that achieves the higher of greater value, also known as the utilitarian principle. Take the action that produces the least harm or the least potential cost. This is known as the risk aversion principle. And finally, the ethical no free lunch rule assumes that virtually all tangible and intangible objects are owned by someone else unless there is a specific declaration otherwise. So how does the no free lunch rule relate to copyrights, patents, and trademarks? We'll discuss this later in later slides. Most professional organizations have a code of conduct by which they expect their members to abide. The Association of Computing Machinery, www.acm.org, has an excellent set of standards that apply to all of us, whether we belong to ACM or not. Here's some real-world ethical dilemmas. Individuals, companies, and corporations are being forced to deal with these new ethical and social issues in ways never before imagined. Employ the ethical analysis we just discussed to the real-world situations presented here and in the text. No issue has been harder for organizations to deal with than that of email. Should companies be allowed to read employees' emails, especially if they are personal? Should employees be allowed to send personal emails to begin with? Should emails be used against a person or company in a court of law? And if so, how? A recent example of this issue is the Microsoft versus Department of Justice antitrust trial. Many emails written by Microsoft's executives have been used against them. Emails are not as anonymous as people think. Sending an email message is more like sending a postcard than sending a sealed envelope. This is a quote from CNN Headline News from April 28, 1996. So in your opinion, what is right? Is it okay for an employee to download the latest picture from Playgirl's website and use it as a screensaver? Is it okay to run a personal commercial website from your workplace computer using the company's computer resources? Is it okay to email discriminatory jokes over the company's network that wouldn't be allowed over the water cooler? Is it okay to send email telling everyone that the boss is a jerk, then get mad when the company fires you? Is it okay for the company to use technology to monitor your computer usage every minute you're on the job? Is it okay for the company to use technology to monitor your keystrokes so that they can determine how much work you are actually doing? What if Susie is using her computer to surf gardening websites 3 hours a day while you have to do her work? What if Joe and Sam play the newest internet games during the coffee break every morning and afternoon, which bogs down the entire company's network? What is the best way for companies and employees to handle these situations? What is the right thing to do? Other ethical dilemmas include companies trying to use new systems to reduce the size of their workforce, such as telephone companies using automated systems to reduce the need for human operators. In cases like these, right and wrong are not really clearly defined, but instead contrasting values are at odds with one another. These can include companies value productivity, employees value their work. This section examines the 5 moral dimensions: information rights, property rights, accountability, liability, and control, system quality, and quality of life. Information rights, privacy and freedom of the internet age. Many of us take our privacy and freedom for granted. You should be aware of how technology is changing and challenging our basic assumptions about these issues. Video rental records are more protected from misuse and prying than are some of your financial records. We all assume that the Constitution guarantees our personal privacy and freedom from surveillance. If someone set up a video camera inside your dorm room or on your front porch to monitor your every movement, what would you do? In some cases, that's similar to what happens when you access some of the websites. So how do we protect our privacy and freedom from surveillance in a high-tech world? The text provides some information regarding privacy rights protected by the law and established practices. But before you jump up and say, hey, the Privacy Act of 1974 says you can't spy on me, remember that the law only applies to the federal government's actions. If Macy's or Playboy or Buy.com wants to collect information about your surfing habits and sell it to other companies, there is nothing to stop them. Absolutely nothing. This whole issue doesn't bother some people at all. In fact, they don't even seem to think about it. The issue doesn't bother others until the intrusions are used against them. Think about this. If information is supposedly collected for one purpose, is it ethical for that information to be used for a totally different purpose without you knowing it? Is it fair to require you to provide medical information that is primarily intended to be used to pay for your insurance bills and then have that same information used against you when the insurance company deems you too expensive and cancels your policy? Is it fair to have that same information used against you in denying your employment because you're too expensive to hire? Information about people's moment-to-moment thoughts and actions, as revealed by their online activity, can change hands quickly. Within seconds of visiting eBay.com or Expedia.com, information detailing a web surfer's activities there is likely to be auctioned on the data exchange run by the Bluekai. That's Bluekai, the Seattle startup. Each day, Bluekai sells 50 million pieces of information like this about specific individuals' browsing habits. For as little as a tenth of a cent apiece, the auctions can happen instantly as a website is visited. Targeted ads can get personal. Last year, Julia Preston, a 32-year-old education software designer in Austin, Texas, researched uterine disorders online. Soon after, she started noticing fertility ads on websites she visited. She now knows she doesn't have a disorder, but she still gets the ads. It's very unnerving, according to her. Consumer tracking is the foundation of an online advertising economy that racked up $23 billion in ad spending last year. Tracking activity is exploding. Researchers at AT&T Labs in Worcester Polytechnic Institute last fall found that tracking technology on 80% of 1,000 popular sites, up from only 40% of those sites in 2005. The journal found tracking files that collect sensitive health and financial data. On Encyclopedia Britannica Incorporation dictionary website, Merriam-Webster.com, one tracking file from the Healthline Networks Incorporated, an ad network, scans a page that a user is viewing and targets ads related to what it sees there. So, for example, a person is looking up depression. Related words could see Healthline ads for depression treatments on that page, and on subsequent pages viewed on other sites. This is according to the web's new goldmine, Your Secrets, The Wall Street Journal, authored by Julia Angwin, Angwin, on July 30th, 2010. Do students believe that there are sufficient protections for privacy in law? If not, what are possible methods for developing appropriate privacy protections? Table 4.3 in the text lists a variety of other laws affecting both the government and private institutions, but few areas of the private sector are as well regulated in respect to privacy. The federal government is taking steps to help protect individual privacy in the United States by passing laws based on Fair Information Practices, also known as FIP. As you can see in Table 4.3, however, the wheels of government turn slowly and the first line of defense should be yours. So if we look at Table 4.3, the Federal Trade Commission has stepped up its effort to protect consumers' personal information on the Internet. An excerpt from their website explains their mission. Privacy is a central element to FTC's consumer protection mission. In recent years, advances in computer technology have made it possible for detailed information about people to be compiled and shared more easily and cheaply than ever. That has produced many benefits for society as a whole and individual consumers. For example, it is easier for law enforcement to track down criminals, for banks to prevent fraud, and for consumers to learn about new products and services, allowing them to make better informed purchasing decisions. At the same time, as personal information becomes more accessible, each of us, companies, associations, government agencies, and consumers, must take precautions to protect against the misuse of that information. This is copied from the www.ftc.gov/privacy. Do you believe that websites you visit actually disclose your data collection and utilization practices? Is it difficult to find? These 5 fair information practices provide the foundation for all privacy legislation in the United States and much of Europe. You might go to a popular website, find its privacy policy, and see how well the site conforms to the principles above. Chances are good that the website you choose will have several statements in the policies which permit them to do anything they want with personal information. Also, do a search on FTC privacy and go to one of the reports listed. A search on FTC behavioral targeting also produces many fine reports on the topic. European countries have much stricter restrictions on gathering data about private individuals on the Internet or elsewhere. European citizens have the right to deny the initial collection of information through informed consent principles. They have the right to know or deny the use of data for purposes other than the original intention. They have the right to inspect and correct any data gathered on them. By way of comparison, Europeans practice opt-in, whereas Americans practice opt-out. So far, American citizens have none of these rights. American businesses physically operating in European countries or transacting business with European citizens via the Internet must abide by these laws. The U.S. Department of Commerce is helping make it easier by establishing safe harbor mechanisms rather than passing laws. You have to ask the question, if it's good enough for the Europeans, why isn't it good enough for Americans? Here's a website dealing with the global privacy issues, sponsored by the Privacy Exchange. Go to www.privacyexchange.org. The European Union protections of privacy are far more powerful than the United States because they require informed consent before a firm can do anything with personal information, besides support the transaction at hand. In Europe, there is no junk postal mail, for instance, because advertising firms are prohibited from using personal information obtained from third parties and without the consent of the individual. Under pressure from privacy advocates, government agencies, and the general public, many websites now post privacy policies. Some sites make their policies obvious and others do not. Some sites actually abide by their policies and others do not. You need to be careful about the terminology used. Review the AltaVista, that's one word, ALTAVISTA.com's privacy policy. And that's at the www.altavista.com/sites/about/privacy, and note that it distinguishes between personally identifiable information and anonymous information. Now review DoubleClick's privacy policy. This is located at www.doubleclick.com/us/corporate/privacy. It too distinguishes between personally identifiable information and anonymous information. However, it does not state that it can match the two types of information to further identify you. How do these organizations gather the information? Simply by using cookies, a part of every browser program. If you have internet access and ever have visited a website, you can bet you have a cookie file on your computer. Most of the data in the file are unintelligible to you. However, they give information to websites about how you prefer the website to be configured, who you are, which website you came from, what do you do while you're on the site, and other information pertinent to the website. You can turn off the cookie option in your browser, but many sites won't let you access this feature if you do. Because the corporate world is demanding better results for dollars spent on internet advertising, some websites have developed web beacons to help track users and determine what they do and don't do on the internet. Web beacons are tiny, indistinguishable files embedded within the web page or within an email message. The beacon monitors behavior of those using the page and combines the information with other data collected to get a more robust picture of how people are using the website and how effective the advertising is. Increasingly, websites are using spyware in an attempt to gather marketing information about visitors and customers. This type of software is installed directly onto your computer and sends data to the company about your surfing habits. Unfortunately, this software can also cause problems within your computer and send information that can be used to identity theft. If you haven't yet installed spyware detection software on your computer, you should consider doing so. Cookies are typically used by tracking companies to build lists of pages visited from a specific computer. A newer type of technology called beacons can watch even more activity. Beacons, also known as web bugs and pixels, are small pieces of software that run on a web page. They can track what a user is doing on the page, including what is being typed or where the mouse is moving. The majority of sites examined by the journal placed at least 7 beacons from outside the companies. Dictionary.com had the most, 41, including several from companies that track health conditions, and one that says it targets consumers by dozens of factors, including zip code and race. Dictionary.com president Shravan Goli attributed the presence of so many tracking tools to the fact that the site was working with a large number of ad networks, each of which places its own cookies and beacons. After the journal contacted the company, it cut the number of networks. It uses and beefed up its privacy policy to more fully disclose its practices. The widespread use of Adobe systems incorporate Flash software to play videos online offers another opportunity to track people. Flash cookies originally were meant to remember users' preferences, such as volume settings for online videos. But Flash cookies can also be used by data collectors to reinstall regular cookies that a user has deleted. This can circumvent a user's attempt to avoid being tracked online. Adobe condemns the practice, and this is according to the web's new gold mine, Your Secrets, from the Wall Street Journal, author of Julia Angwin, on July 30th, 2010. Most e-commerce merchants are pushing for self-regulation and the practice of requiring individuals to opt out of data gathering. Opting out allows individuals to tell an organization not to share personal information with any third party. The government initially agreed that this position with that position, but has since realized it isn't working very well for individuals. In mid-2000, the Federal Trade Commission started seeking government regulation on information gathering and advocates. In mid-2000, the Federal Trade Commission started seeking government regulation of information gathering and advocates the right of individuals to opt in. Opting in requires individuals to expressly give an organization the right to gather information before any information can be collected. So if you visit the FTC website at www.ftc.gov/privacy/index.html for the latest information on this subject. So a question to you would be, do you believe that businesses should be pressed to provide more comprehensive privacy protections online? Businesses prefer the looser regulation, but individuals may not. Most individuals do not take the proper steps to ensure their own privacy in any case. And most people do not know how to protect your privacy online. Does that mean that privacy is unimportant or that people don't care? According to the law, you must inform someone if you are tapping a telephone conversation with them. On the other hand, you can legally record that person's internet transmissions without any need to inform them that you are doing so. This type of disparity exists because our laws have not kept up with emerging technologies. There are some tools that help you block someone from tracing your internet activities, as the text discusses. However, if you use your company's computers for most of your web browsing or email activities, you may want to check with your information technology department before you install the tools. The World Wide Web Consortium has developed standards for how privacy policies can be embedded into web pages and subsequently be compared to a user's privacy wishes through the user's web browser. The Platform for Privacy Practices, also known as P3P, allows you to determine what sites can collect information behind the scenes through your computer's cookie files. Because the P3P standards are machine readable, you don't have to search each website for its privacy policy. You let the computers do the comparison and automatically block any site not conforming to your wishes.
A new feature on Facebook is raising concerns over privacy on the social network used by 400 million users. Facebook is developing tools that collects users' interests in products and then shares that information on other websites. Now lawmakers are taking Facebook to task, saying the site needs to make it easier for users to protect their privacy. For more now on all of this, we're joined by up-to-the-minute technology consultant John Quain. Wow.
Again.
Amazing, because I have this love-hate relationship with Facebook because I constantly feel like my information is just going everywhere. What is going on with this new thing?
Right, it always makes me nervous. You know, we share musical interests or tastes or stories on Facebook, and I think, gee, where is that going to go? What will happen with it? Well, usually you have a lot of privacy settings that they made them more complicated, deeper, harder to get to. And now they've introduced a new feature. It's kind of in a prototype stage, but the basic idea is that they want to share your personal information, not just within Facebook, but outside to all the websites that might have alliances with Facebook, and then share the information from those websites back into the data as well. And they're two sort of inconspicuous, it might seem innocent ways they're doing it. Okay. And one is a like button. You know, you see the Facebook share button, you'll see it on the CBS page, you'll see it on the CBS News page, you'll see it on my own website. There's, you know, if you like it, or right. you want to share it, pardon me, if you want to share it on Facebook, and then you have to sign in and put it up there. Now they have a like button. Right. If you click on that and you're logged into Facebook, it'll automatically post it to your Facebook wall, but also it'll show you all your friends who might have also liked that story, and vice versa. And now that site has that information and access to your Facebook information, and Facebook has information about all these websites that you may have visited.
Now, what is Facebook getting out of this? Are they making money off of this? What's the upside for them?
Well, the upside could be to make money off. The more you know about the users, the more targeted you can make advertising. That's always been the dream of internet advertising. It hasn't ever really worked out that way.
Okay.
I mean, for various reasons, people have tried it. A lot of users don't like it. We have fake Facebook accounts. But they're trying this personalization key as well, so that the idea is when you go from Facebook to, let's say, Pandora, the music service, or Yelp, the review service,
okay,
it'll automatically know all my interest. It'll know, oh, JQ is in New York. He's interested in restaurants in New York. So all the Yelp reviews might pop up about Indian restaurants that I might like. Now, I happen to like Indian restaurants, but maybe I don't want everybody in the world to know. Now they do, but I didn't want them on Facebook. And so all this personal information that's out there that you're not really aware of is now going to be shared among all these different sites.
Okay, I would have to say I'm one of those people. I don't want all that information
Right.
out there. So what exactly do we do to set the privacy settings? And I understand it's a lengthy process.
It's complicated.
So, okay, DVR this. We'll leave it up there for a while.
Record it,
So
go to it.
let's look at it.
Right, okay, well, you can go to your Facebook page, and then there's an account setting on the top right-hand corner. You go to account, you go to the privacy settings, then you go to the applications and websites underneath that, and then underneath that, there's something called Instant Personalization Pilot Program. That's got an edit settings. Go to the edit settings. When you're finally there, you'll see a little statement and a little checkbox. It's about allow select partners, et cetera, to look at information. Uncheck that box. That's the very first thing you can do, because that's what this program is all about.
Okay.
I mean, that's why those senators got upset, because you're automatically signed in. So Schumer and Franken and some other senators sent a letter to Facebook complaining about this, because they want us to have to opt into it rather than automatically be signed up to this. Because if you're not paying attention, all of a sudden it's just out there.
Incredible.
So
incredible.
that's the big problem.
Oh, I'll go ahead and post that on my Facebook
Right.
page, so if you want to become my friend, you can see it.
I guess I have to put it on my Facebook
You do
page
too. We really appreciate all the information. Kind of complicated, but I think people can go through it and get it under control.
And also, if they just log out of Facebook
Yeah.
when they're not using it, that's one way to sort of restrict it. And also complain. In past cases, when all the users sort of rioted, had a virtual riot online, Facebook withdrew some features, or changed them. So maybe that will do the trick.
All right. Technology consultant John Coyne. John, thanks so much.
Good to see you.
So looking at that last video, we can ask some questions here, like, do people who use Facebook have a legitimate claim to privacy when they themselves are posting information about themselves? How can using the sharing privacy controls help preserve your privacy on Facebook? In what ways is the sharing control ineffective? How will changing your connection settings on Facebook help protect your privacy? And finally, why are Facebook's facial recognition software and policies a potential threat to privacy? Intellectual property issues have been around for hundreds of years. Some of the laws and policies in place to settle disputes about copyrights, patents, and trade secrets have been rewritten to apply to the Internet. Intellectual property is a result of someone's effort at creating a product of value based on their experiences, knowledge, and education. In short, intellectual property is brain power. What if you wrote the next great American novel, hoping to cash in big time? Maybe you could retire in the Bahamas and drink a lemonade on the beach all day. But then you find out that someone else posted your next great American novel to the internet and everyone is reading it free of charge. Now you're back into your hometown and drinking lemonades in the local mall, while you decide whether to look for a job at McDonald's or Burger King. The good news is everyone loves your book. Unfortunately, that sort of thing happens too often in the cyber world. You're pretty excited to get a free copy of the newest game software, while the poor guy who spent hours of his time and effort writing it is not so excited and realizes he's not getting any compensation. Do you believe that the property rights guaranteed by trade secrets, copyrights, and patents are strong enough to avoid the theft of intellectual property online? Can you give an example of a trade secret? For example, the formula of Coke, a method of doing business or business process. Can you give an example of a copyright, which could include the copyright of a photo or newspaper article? And give an example of a patent. Good example might be Amazon's one-click shopping as a business process patent. Or Kodak's claim to have a patent on digital still cameras with digital displays for a viewfinder. Copyright laws and intellectual property rights cannot be violated on the internet any more than they can in other mediums. Although this is not a law class, you should be aware of the fine line between acceptable and legal usage of materials and the illegal theft of materials. When it comes to copyright material, the underlying ideas are not protected, just the publication of the material. On the other hand, a patent guarantees a monopoly on the underlying concepts and ideas. Before you use anything, especially any material on the World Wide Web, make sure you're using it legally and ethically. Get past the idea because everything on the web is free, easy to access, and available 24 hours a day. It must be, therefore, okay to use it however you want. The question should be asking yourself is it ethically right and legal? The Business Software Alliance, located at www.bsa.org, is an organization working to prevent software privacy and the illegal use of copyrighted materials around the world. I do not think the problem is limited to the 17-year-old computer geek located in his bedroom. This is a crime that can be committed by anyone, as this news clip shows. And I'm quoting, 17 high-tech professionals were indicted on federal charges for participating in an internet piracy ring that hijacked software worth more than $1 million. The government said 12 of those indicted are members of an underground organization, while the 5 others are employees of an Intel corporation. The individuals indicted were charged with conspiracy to infringe on copyright, which carries a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison, a $250,000 fine, and restitution. This is located in the AP Newswire, May 5, 2000. Perhaps the most notorious copyright infringement and intellectual property case in 2000 and 2001 involved the music industry. MP3, one of the most popular methods of illegally downloading music from websites, lost a court battle waged by the music industry. MP3 was forced to pay millions of dollars to the industry for lost revenues. The rock group Metallica sued Napster.com because it allowed people to trade copyrighted material illegally. Napster.com lost the battle and went on to devise methods for legally downloading music. So before you copy your favorite song clip, remember you're actually stealing someone else's property, and surely if you walked into a retail store and took the CD without paying for it. The music industry and the film industry are now suing individuals who continually download copies of songs and movies from websites. Students, you may be unwilling to admit or infringing upon the intellectual property rights, but I need to ask whether you are familiar with the internet and its ability to bypass intellectual property protections. Do you believe that legislation such as the DMCA is having any effect? How many of you may have friends who download free music from peer-to-peer sites or even free videos? Many of our laws and court decisions establishing precedent in the area of accountability, liability, and control were firmly in place long before computers were invented. Many of them date back to the early 1900s, and some simply don't even make sense in this day and age. That's what we were referring to in the opening paragraphs of this lecture when we talked about new questions for organizations, companies, and the workplace in general. No issue makes this subject more important than the internet laws our government has tried and still tries to pass. One tenet of the Communications Decency Act, struck down by the courts, and the Child Online Protection Act, currently in the courts, is that the internet service providers should somehow be liable for the content placed on the internet through their users. So ask yourself these questions. If you receive an obscene phone call, is the telephone company responsible and liable for the problem? If you receive a threatening letter in the mail, is the U.S. Postal Service responsible for reading every piece of mail on a chance that there might be a problem in one of the letters? The text gives several examples of the recent liability problems and the difficulties companies face as networks, computers, and data increasingly become common strategic tools. Using examples from the text, Why do you, Who do you consider to be the liable party in the incident involving Bank of America customers whose paychecks were denied due to an operating error in the bank's computer center? Is it the designers of the system at the center? Is there no liability involved? It is difficult to ascribe liability to software developers for the same reason that it is difficult to ascribe publisher liability to the effects of a book. As we rely on information systems more, data quality issues are gaining importance. These issues affect you as a consumer and as a business user. As our reliance on technology continues to grow, we're bound to run into problems caused by poor system quality more often and in unexpected ways. If we look at Facebook's September 23rd outage, If we look at Facebook's September 23rd outage that was caused by a software flaw that crippled its database clusters, the downtime was the worst at the social network in 4 years. The outage that darkened Facebook for 2.5 hours on September 23rd in 2010 was caused by a software flaw in its database clusters. Some of the 500 million plus Facebook users tweeted about the event on Twitter, wondering what they would do without access to their photos, links, videos, and other content they shared on the massive social network. The key flaw that caused the outage to be so severe was an unfortunate handling of an error. This was according to Robert Johnson, who's the director of software engineering at Facebook. He posted this in a blog post. An automated system for verifying configuration values ended up causing much more damage than it fixed. You can read about this in eweek.com in a title called Facebook Outage Triggered by Database Software Error. Author was Clint Bolton, September 24, 2010. When the credit reporting agencies screw up your credit record and you cannot get a car loan, whose fault is it? What if you're driving down the road, the computer chip controlling your brake system fails, and you have a rather nasty crash? Who's at fault? You, the car company, or the company that made the computer chip? Who is responsible for system downtime when a popular email program has holes allowing viruses to spread and multiply? The software manufacturer or the company that licenses the software? Most of us use software that a manufacturer knows contains bugs. They usually are nothing more than an aggregation and a frustration. But once in a while, they will affect our use of the computer. Our natural tendency is to let the marketplace control the balance by letting the customer punish or reward the producer. But will that be enough? Or will the issue end up in the courts? When a network server crashes and day traders miss an important trade, who is responsible for the lost income? The internet service provider? The financial service company? No one? As more and more companies do business in the internet, will internet service providers or the companies doing business on the internet be held accountable for equipment outages that rendered the business unable to process transactions? Do you have any opinion about when software is good enough? Does it depend on a particular product? For example, distinguish between a software used by air traffic controllers and a software used by word processing. Do you believe that there are different levels of acceptable quality for these products? Invariably, when discussing online technology, some of you may mention there is concern about losing the face-to-face contact with other human beings. We hear stories about children who haven't developed normal social skills because they spend all their time in front of a computer. No discussion about the quality of life issues would be complete without mentioning the tales of online love affairs. Of course, many people lose their jobs and their way of life because of technology. These are all very valid concerns. What, in your opinion, is the impact of all this wired stuff on children? How should we protect against the threats, real or perceived? The Child Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA, that went in effect in April 2000, has helped prosecute online predators and others using networks to commit crimes against children. However, it seems that more we try to protect children's use of the internet, the more ways people find to harm them. The Electronic Frontiers Foundation at www.EFF, as in Edward Frank.org, an organization dedicated to protecting the rights and preserving freedom of the electronic frontier, has lots of information about protecting free speech on the internet. One quality of life that affects more and more humans One quality of life issue that affects more and more people personally is the ability to work from home. Most telecommuters had their regular day job from 9 to 5 days a week in a typical office setting. If they didn't get their work done today, they would usually wait until they were back in the office tomorrow or Monday. Now, because of technology, they can work 7 days a week, all hours of the day, at home, and sometimes they do. The impact on personal and family life can be considerable. In many regards, this problem extends not just to telecommuters, but to many employees who spend their normal 40 to 50 hours a week in the office and then stay wired in the evenings, on weekends, and even during vacations. This is an upside to the job issue, though. Many parents like telecommunicating. There is an upside to the jobs issue, though. Many parents like telecommuting because they can stay home with, or at least near, their children. More and more people are leaving the big cities and moving to small towns for the quality of life, yet they still can keep their well-paying jobs. Many small companies are able to expand their customer base because technology, which in turn helps their employees immensely. Completely new businesses are born because of technology. Computer crime is one area that has been extremely hard for our society and our governments to keep up with in rapid change. Many laws have been rewritten and many new laws must be implemented to accommodate the changes. Computer crime and abuse extends to any wrongdoing involving equipment and internet usage. We spoke earlier about anonymity, not being a license for socially acceptable We spoke earlier about anonymity, not being a license for socially unacceptable behavior. You should remember that everything you do on a network or the internet is recorded and it can be tracked. Many people committing computer crimes and abuse have been caught and prosecuted. If we look at spamming, it's unsolicited email. It has been challenged in the courts by internet service providers as an unfair practice. The ISPs, internet service providers, say thousands of these emails clog their systems and no one wants them anyway. The spammers argue that it's their right to speech. The spammers argue their right to freedom of speech is violated if they can't send emails to anyone they want. Congress passed a new law in late 2003 to clamp down on spamming. Unfortunately, the law doesn't seem to be producing very many positive results. Other issues affecting our society include job losses and career changes caused by technology. You can argue the positive and negative effects, but one thing is clear. You'll be part of the evolution of technology for the rest of your life. You will have to continually update your skills and knowledge in order to remain competitive in the job market. As companies continue to embrace new technology and new methods of using it, you'll be responsible for ensuring your skills and education remain current. Our government recognizes the danger of allowing unequal access to technology to fester. It has enlisted the help of private individuals and corporations in the effort to install computers and internet access in public schools and libraries all across the nation and the world. Most schools are now wired for networks and are learning to incorporate technology into the curriculum. There's even a website, www.digitaldivide.org, dedicated to the digital divide situation.
The project is run by 24 students from Asia, Europe, and the Arab world. An almost fully automatic program combs the internet in search of militant leaders and their followers. It tries to identify anonymous authors using text criteria such as word length, punctuation, syntax, and content to create a profile almost as unique as a human fingerprint. The software provides a graphic representation of the results known as a right print. Here, the profile on the upper left of the screen fits the anonymous internet entries on the bottom right. This is the right print of a young man from a chat forum. The results show that he is unsure of himself and is seeking advice on a number of issues. The answers are much clearer. The content revolves around the same topic: religion. Key words are highlighted by the software. Another author glorifies violence. His choice of themes is so specific that he's deemed dangerous. The software can also recognize that he's an opinion leader at the center of the network. The computer is capable of establishing levels of importance among chat forum users, how dangerous they are, and with whom they are in contact.
Right now, we have expanded to about 20 to 30,000 features that we can identify. So it's actually very difficult for you to disguise in a way that I cannot extract your features. But even if you know some of the features, you want to change your style, when you took a huge effort to change your style to the point that the computer cannot recognize you, then you are a different person. If you become a different person, you don't use violent term anymore, you don't use racist term, you don't use, then you will not be able to attract your original audience. We have changed you for good, hopefully.
The project has made the University of Tucson a sought-after address for Western intelligence agencies. Some of them are already helping to fund the project, but the researchers aren't saying who they are.
Civil rights advocates warn that current measures to fight internet crime are infringing on freedom of speech and individual privacy. And now European politicians say the names of innocent citizens are appearing on police blacklists. The German sociologist in our next report says he's done nothing to deserve the nightmare he was subjected to, all because, he says, of an article he published.
For the past 12 months, German federal police have been watching every move André Holm and his girlfriend have made. They suspect Holm may be a member of a radical left-wing terror cell. All his telephone conversations are tapped. His mobile phone gives investigators his exact position every... It's clear that police are interested in every trivial aspect of his life.
Every single minute of my life is noted. If I'm leaving the house with one of my kids or coming back with them, I have to ask myself what all this has to do with solving crimes.
Holm is a sociologist at Humboldt University in Berlin. His published material deals with concepts like gentrification or the slide into poverty, and describes the ever-increasing gap between rich and poor. These are everyday topics for a sociologist, but they recurred in a letter from a radical left-wing group claiming responsibility for arson attacks on police vehicles alongside their justification. A suspected member of the group was arrested in July. Holm allegedly spoke to him on 2 occasions. The German Criminal Investigation Bureau alleged that he'd been involved in a terrorist plot, and a police task force was onto him.
They hammered on the door and threw me to the floor. Armed men with guns secured all the rooms, like in the movies. I was first taken in a car, handcuffed, then by helicopter to Karlsruhe. The prison doors closed behind me. There was no window in the cell. I thought to myself, this is serious. This is for real.
He was in jail for 3 weeks in solitary confinement. He was allowed out in the yard for 1 hour a day. His children didn't know where their father was. Back at home, the surveillance continued. Agents sometimes make mistakes that cause the telephone to play up. Every internet site that Holm's girlfriend visits is registered. They've lost all their privacy.
It's a really unpleasant feeling to think there's a camera fixed on you. As soon as you open the front door, you know there's someone watching your every move.
Holm was let out of jail after 3 weeks. The Federal Court of Justice said his imprisonment was illegal. Even so, Holm and his lawyer assume the surveillance is ongoing. The Federal Prosecutor's Office and the Criminal Investigation Bureau have so far declined to deny that assumption.
And that's all for our in-depth report. Thanks so much for joining us here at DWTV, and stay with us if you can.